Make the choice to begin anywhere in your life, and the journey has started. And along the way, be inspired. Listen to the stories by joining the president of Howard University, Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, on The Journey.
As a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the ensuing financial downturn, a college degree is becoming even more essential for students, even as it is becoming more difficult for them to pay for a quality education. Hello, my name is Dr. Wayne Frederick, and my guest today on The Journey is Howard University's Director of Financial Aid, Robert Muhammad. Welcome, Mr. Muhammad.
Thank you for having me.
So, first, let's start with where it all began, in Tennessee. Tell us about the place you grew up in Tennessee, or at least I know you were raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, but you were born in Tennessee. Tell us a little bit about Tennessee before telling us about Charlotte.
Sure. So, born in Johnson City, the home of East Tennessee State University. Didn't spend a lot of time there. Moved to Charlotte as an infant. Raised by my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, who adopted me and made sure I was taken care of. So I went through the Charlotte Mecklenburg school systems, uh, started my baccalaureate journey at UNC Charlotte, and then from there went to Selma State University where I received my master's degree.
So you got a lot of North Carolina blue in you. So tell us about first the public school system. What was your K through 12 education like, and what did you take away from that as you look at young people who are coming out of that public high school system across the country and trying to come here to Howard University?
I didn't see enough of folks who looked like you or especially when it comes to male teachers. I didn't see enough of folks who actually took the time to really want to get to know more about the students of color. If they did, it was more or less from a project standpoint, in which they were trying to figure something out, why someone talked a certain way, had a certain GPA, why they could test so well. But there was a lack of depth there. And then, of course, you had the unfortunate issues in which in some of the high schools, you just had more black students than white students. You had the opportunity, we had less opportunities in which you would see benefits throughout the entire system. So you had inner city, and then you had those that were outside the city and suburbs who had a much better educational experience than some inside the city.
Yeah. Now, as you look back at that and you were starting to think about college, what was the process for you then? And were there guidance counselors? Were there other people who were influencing you, your grandparents? I mean, where were the influences coming from, and how weighty were they in terms of contributing to your decision to go to UNC at Charlotte?
They weren't weighty enough. People assumed because I was considered to be quote unquote smart, I could figure it out. So when it came to guidance counselors, they saw me as an anomaly, and they saw if I did a perfect score on a PSAT or did well on the SAT, that they would use that to highlight the school. But there was not a lot of guidance, so I was left to my own devices. And I happened to find myself at UNC Charlotte. I actually started first at a community college because when I was on my way to a 4 year school, I realized I wasn't ready because even though I was quote unquote smart, I lacked some of the remedial skills, remediation needs in order to do well. So I decided to do community college and then to the UNC Charlotte.
And what degree did you pursue there at UNC Charlotte?
Sociology degree with a minor in African Studies and criminal justice.
So that definitely gave you an inclination and I would say a calling to being involved in the community, uh, getting being a bit of a community activist, as it were. Talk to me a bit about what you did right after your experience at UNC Charlotte that really helped you place your foot firmly in that type of work.
Sure. Well, I became familiar with Malcolm X, read his autobiography, saw some similarities there with Malcolm's upbringing, my upbringing, and some of the paths that I could have taken that I decided not to take. Unfortunately, Malcolm did, and found myself enamored with the Nation of Islam, and found myself a member of the Nation of Islam in college. So while I was at UNC Charlotte, I was a member. I traveled throughout the Southeast with Minister Farrakhan. And then I was fortunate enough to become his minister in Charlotte for about 4 years. So the community service and activism was a calling from my church upbringing. I didn't see the type of activism against the drug activity. I didn't see that activity against the gang activity that was so pervasive in some of the neighborhoods. And when I was in college, we had 109 murders in Charlotte in one year. That paled by comparison with DC at that time and Chicago and Philadelphia. But still, for Charlotte, that was a huge number. So I had a calling to want to do something for people, and the Nation of Islam gave me that outlet at that time.
And then you went to Winston-Salem to get your MBA. What was your thought process then, and where were you heading after your MBA?
Well, at that time, I was already working in financial aid. And I'd already worked at Central Piedmont and at UNC Charlotte, Central Piedmont Community College, UNC Charlotte. And I had still had a calling to be a part of the community, but I was no longer involved with the community organization. So I worked with a program called Upward Bound, a TRIO program that further helped me want to give back to the community. And to be quite frank, I became a bit bored with my time at UNC Charlotte. I figured out how to do the work well enough, and someone asked what I consider maybe Winston-Salem State as an opportunity for a directorship. And when I arrived, I was encouraged to move forward to perhaps pursue the MBA, which I did. Because prior to that, I was working on a graduate studies in religious studies. So I switched totally from UNC Charlotte trajectory to a trajectory at Winston-Salem State.
All right. So let's. I want to spend a lot of time on financial aid today, and
Yes, yes,
really talk, because there's a demystification that has to take place, I think, for our community around this issue. Right. So you've had an incredible experience. One of the reasons we recruited you is because of the success that you've had, especially around Pell Grant students getting verified and that type of thing. So first, let's start with the Fafsa.
yes.
Tell our audience, what is the Fafsa, and how was it created? Why do you have to fill it out in the first place?
Okay, so the FAFSA is the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is a byproduct or direct outgrowth of the 1965 Higher Education Act by Lyndon Baines Johnson, President Johnson, which established financial aid as we will come to know it today. So the opportunity for grants and loans and federal work study. Um, so the importance of the FAFSA to me is that it's like the golden ticket of opportunity. Once you complete it and it's awardable and it is a good document and instrument, any school that you desire to attend, you can submit the FAFSA and be considered for admissions as long as you meet the admissions criteria. So it really helps you open the door for higher education, and it helps you shop around a bit, for lack of a better term, for the best financial aid package or the type of school that might meet the needs of the student. So for me, financial aid should never be an impediment. It should always be a way in which we help students progress and move forward for opportunity.
Now, that document is evaluated through a process with Department of Education, with the federal government. That process of evaluating that document, for lack of a better word, could be a bit of an interrogation that results in
Yeah.
flags and the need for verification. What exactly are they trying to verify the majority of the time when students do get that email? And low-income students in particular are far more likely to be pulled for verification. And those are the students who need the financial aid the most. So what is that process of evaluating the form and then telling a student that, listen, you've been pulled for verification? What does that mean?
Well, firstly, verification can be something that is random. About 22 to 38% of students can be selected. And then also sometimes the students going in and adjusting the FAFSA or adding schools to the FAFSA, doing some different things with it, that may also cause he or she to be pulled. But to your question or to your point, as far as the low income students or Pell eligible students having to do the verification, we've said in the industry of financial aid for the longest that we should not be forcing students who are already demonstrated to have financial hardship to then go through verification. So one of the conversations that I began with the Department of Education a few years ago, and some others have done the same, is if a student receives free and reduced lunch, or if a student is receives SNAP benefits, benefits for or anything like that, or if they're in a TRIO program, let that data be used also as they enter college. And if you're going to verify them, let that be the verification done only once, versus once every 4 years, because the data demonstrates things don't change typically that much year to year. And so by us having that process, some students may feel that they shouldn't even pursue the opportunity to complete their FAFSA because they feel it's daunting. So in some ways, it's very prohibitive, in my opinion.
So if a student spells their mother's first name incorrectly, doesn't match with information the federal government has about their mom, or for that matter, the student leaves out an initial, middle initial when they had previously used it, are those the types of things that you can get pulled for verification?
Maybe not verification, but they can put the record into suspense, whereby we can't match all the data. And as a result, it's difficult to then pull that data from your number of FAFSAs you have on file to match it with an admissions record. So what we do in financial aid, we try to create algorithms through the computer programs in order to take some of those hardships out of the way, those stumbling blocks out of the way. And something we've even said to Department of Education is because of the way some students may have a hyphen or an apostrophe with a name, consider that and don't have that work against the student. Figure out if there's other ways in which to determine the student can have the FAFSA match their admissions data.
All right. And then verification issues may be around tax forms not submitted, can't verify employment or lack of it for a particular parent, or parents don't live in the same household. How much of that you think affects low-income students, and what is the process to try to assist those students with getting that data or getting the federal government to recognize that they don't have access to that data?
Yes, so a couple of things. One is that you have a data retrieval tool through the IRS, which allows you to match tax document information to the FAFSA. That works most of the time, although we have found some error rates with that as well. But the other challenge is if the student does not use the data retrieval tool and they're trying to submit documents to either a university or college or to a third party servicer, oftentimes something gets lost in translation. So they may resubmit something repeatedly because they didn't understand how we asked the question. They may fax something over and have it flipped over so you have a blank page. So it's incumbent upon the universities and colleges to be able to take that data, be able to assemble it, and then determine where some of the challenges might be for students. But there are some challenges overall with tax returns, let's say. If someone were to consider themselves head of household and they can't verify, demonstrate that, and they were told to do this by someone, let's say a tax preparer, but they don't meet that criteria, that will pull them for verification as well. And what we find in that case is it may be more advantageous not to complete verification because in doing so, they would have to perhaps pay money back to the Fed, or to the IRS, because they received a tax refund. So some parents will weigh the options, decide this year I'll just pay out of pocket, and next year we'll pursue the other avenue for, let's say, a Pell Grant or other aid.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that you've been known for is not having any lines at the beginning of the semester, wrapping around the building. What are some of the things that you put in place to avoid that type of activity?
Getting involved very early and somewhat intrusive in the process for students, using texting, using hard copy mails, postcards, signage on campus, QR codes, targeted call campaigns, and then using our friends on campus. So if we know we have a athletics department that has all these students who may be Pell eligible and they're going to get a scholarship as an athlete, help them help us to reach their students. The same for band, the same for choir, the same for any trio program. But then as we step through the data and see how well we're doing year over year as far as FAFSA completion or verification, seeing what some of the pain points may be. Because if you look at the data, you may see one year you're down in some area, what may cause that, and then try to figure out how to correct it as early as possible. My philosophy is if we can get students engaged early and award students early, and that's all students, and do it early enough, that gives those students the opportunity to feel good about the award when they go home for the summer, and they can also make plans for how they may pay for their education. It also says to their friends, you got an award, I didn't get an award, maybe I need to check to see if I was informed about verification needed to be completed. And then we also do some things around campus where when the campus opens back up, we will go into dorms, we will go into public areas, and we will have folks set up in order to talk to students. The one challenging area, the one reason that I'm so persistent about this approach is because about 35% of all of our students have some form of challenge with the digital divide, whether it's internet connection is going to be always there for them, PC, laptop, etc. So as a result, you want to make sure you find ways to engage those students as well. And have those students, if you're going to have a line, have it comprised of students who have those real challenges as we make the effort to begin our fall journey.
And obviously, you've been interacting with the system for quite some time. I think everyone would say that you probably have some very strong opinions about reforms, and with a new administration, there's opportunity for that. So let's discuss some of that. Student debt. What are your thoughts about retiring student debt completely?
I could see some aspect of student debt being retired or some portion, especially around bad actors in higher education who are no longer in business, or who, if they are in business, and then maybe shouldn't be in business. I can see students benefiting from that. I can see some types of programs that are outdated, may be allowed to have some consideration as well. I'm not a proponent of 100% forgiveness, and one, I don't think it's fiscally responsible, and that's 1.4 trillion dollars that we're taking off the books. And two, I do think that students, as well as universities and colleges, collectively have to have skin in the game. And so for a student to be able to say after 4 years, possibly, I changed my mind, can we do a do over? I don't think that's the best way at all. So
So,
if we do it, I think it should be around some specific opportunities and some specific challenges that we're trying to address.
all right, let's see if we can get this right, and probably send a tape and a suggestion to the Department of Education and even the White House. 100,000 and less, or 50,000 and less?
If I were to do it, it would be $50,000 or less.
It'd be 50,000 or less.
Yeah.
What would be your litmus test for qualification for debt being retired? Current income, uh, the field of study, and the magnitude of debt as a ratio to overall assets. What would you use as your litmus test, or something else that you may want to add in there?
Oh no! As you actually asked the question about 50 or $100,000, I thought about some of the programs. I thought about medicine. I thought about dentistry. I think about law school,
Yep.
and you may actually increase the forgiveness based on those types of professions. And I also recognize, it's easy for us from the outside looking at the medical profession to say, well, doctors have it easy or dentists have it easy, but there's a lot of money that goes into creating the opportunity for walking across that stage with the degree conferred upon that student. And now, as I understand it, and I may be wrong, insurance is just so high. So you have all these different factors that may help mitigate, or I should say support, why there would be maybe a sliding scale, or certainly with some types of professions, different opportunity given.
Yeah, you're
Now, as
absolutely
far
right. And and medical doctors, dentists, they also struggle with where to practice or what opportunities to pursue in terms of training based on that debt. And that's why, I do agree with you that potentially a sliding scale, would be a good litmus test. But let's say we're looking at somebody with a bachelor's degree. Are you going to look at present income or projected income? How would you evaluate that? So let's say a student starts off with a certain income. Using your sliding scale, would you check them every 3 to 5 years to see what their capacity is, and continue to decrease their debt burden and give them more forgiveness based on their growing income?
I think that's being discussed more in the industry. It's some of the opportunities that the federal government's looking at. I think the only challenge, well, a challenge we have there is that check in frequent enough, and do we have enough information as the market changes Will that person find he or she is outside, is no longer marketable, and do they need skills? And if they need skills, then have to go back and rethink how they need to have the opportunity of repayment recalibrated. Let's say it would have to be something where in which you had some contingencies in place, because as we know, that things are changing so drastically now as far as opportunities for employment or making employment, that it's not what it was even 5 or 10 years ago. So we have to have something as far as contingencies in place.
Yeah. And as I look at this industry, now obviously loans are what we're talking about in that debt. But the financial aid package is made up of several other components. And so let's
Yeah.
touch on a few of those to help our audience, especially with another class just accepted. They'll be making a decision by May 1st based on the packages that have been sent out to them. Let's walk them through a little bit about that. Pell Grant. What exactly is a Pell Grant, and what's the range that students can get from a Pell Grant, and how do they get it?
Okay, so Pell Grant is an entitlement type of financial aid based on a number of determinants from the FAFSA. So household size, number in college, income, those types of things are placed through a federal methodology, which is quite lengthy. I did one by hand, and it's not a lot of fun. But you're able to take that information and determine if that student meets the criteria for a Pell Grant. And a Pell Grant at this point is at $6,195 per year. I believe the lowest Pell Grant is about $200, $250 per year. And so as the student's expected family contribution, EFC, increases, and that really is a number dollar for dollar that increases up to or close to roughly $5,775, the less Pell Grant opportunity a student has. And so as that occurs, then some students are having to find other ways to offset the loss of some Pell with additional types of grant opportunities that may come from on campus or in the community, a combination thereof. There is a type of grant that's a companion to Pell called FSEOG, which is Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. Students who have a zero EFC, that goes along with Pell. The challenge with FSEOG is its limited funding. So once the funding is gone or you've depleted it, you don't have any funds that you can actually replace it with, unless you find students who don't attend and then you reallocate those resources accordingly.
So you need to apply early so you can get it on the front end. And how much can you get in an SEOG grant?
$4,000 at
All right.
Howard University.
So that sounds like 10,915 that you could potentially get if your expected family contribution is zero and you fill out your forms early enough.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Federal work study, you mentioned that earlier. How does that work?
So federal work study is also a campus-based program similar to FSEOG, and it's limited funding. It's based on the student's expected family contribution, usually, but it has a larger scale than just having a zero EFC. So you may have it set at, let's say, $4,000 to $5,000, depending upon your population. And it's available not only to undergraduates, but to graduates and professional students as well. So the idea is that students can work up to 20 hours per week and typically make a market rate in the city they're living in, and it can be anywhere from $15 to $20. And they also may get additional funding or additional opportunity for earnings based on the type of work they're doing. So some students may make more than, let's say, $15 to $20 per week.
So I just had an accreditation visit this week for one of the schools and colleges. And one of the points of commendation from the side team was reports from students about the responsiveness of financial aid. The students said that the responsiveness from the financial aid office was excellent. People got back to them within an hour to 1 day. So very, very good feedback. What can students expect and their parents when they return this coming fall? And to be quite honest, from now through the summer, as they get ready for the fall and submit their forms, submit their applications, what can they expect from the financial aid office under your leadership? For the first time, you have a full academic year with some modicum of normalcy.
My approach, and we just had a conversation about this morning, and I'll say a little bit earlier, contingency. We don't know how things may look over the next several weeks or several months, but meet the students and the parents' needs where they are, assess how well we are responsive, and to make sure that in our responsiveness we do it in the type of manner that is kind, courteous, and that we're able to be empathetic and understand. And I say this about Fafsa all the time. This is a noble profession. We do what we do. I think it's so noble. So do with that nobility, whereby folks feel that they are part of the Howard family proper, or if they're going to be, or if they are thinking about Howard and they decide to do something different, at least they will say, I had a good experience in my attempt to become a part of the family. But we're looking at everything from um, some new technology that's going to be very helpful as far as we manage our emails. We have a chat bot that is almost ready to roll out through Ocelot. That's also going to give us some financial aid videos. The videos will be available 24/7, so it'll be 24-hour customer service. And then we're also going to have those available in text as well as in letters and things the correspondences that we send out. So we'll be able to try to meet parents and students where they are and based on what they need with these tools.
So as we close, I ask all my guests who come on the show, why Howard University? And in your circumstance in particular, it's certainly pertinent because we have tried for a couple of years to get you here. We're happy that you're here. You're a major part of my vision in terms of where I'm trying to take the university. So why Howard University?
I've known about Howard for a long period of time. Before I decided to go into community activism, I wanted to be a lawyer, and Howard was my choice. I took a different path, went into financial aid after doing admissions, but I always looked at Howard. I always knew Howard was one of those universities on the hilltop, so to speak. So I would ask folks every once in a while how things are going, and never thought that I have the opportunity perhaps to become a director or an administrator because I know these types of jobs are highly sought after. But when the opportunity came around, not only the first time, but the second time, I felt compelled to try to come to Howard and provide what hopefully I can do in order to make Howard as administratively strong with financial aid as we are academically strong as a university.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. My guest today was Robert Muhammad, Howard University's Director of Financial Aid. I'm Dr. Wayne Frederick. Please join me next time on The Journey.
This program was produced by WHUT and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at whut.org. Thank you.